Hey everyone, Tired Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully you guys are doing well and have had a good weekend. So I feel like we got spared yesterday. Definitely an underperformer for sure. We were expecting a complete severe weather outbreak with tornadoes included, and I think there were a lot of factors that really went into that, especially cloud cover across this region over towards Missouri in particular. There were a few tornado warnings in Oklahoma, but no confirmed reports. That might change down the line. I was suspicious of at least maybe one potential tornado over there, and then of course there were the tornadoes in Minnesota and South Dakota. But overall, 88 reports considering what the forecast was going to be. I consider that a win in the fact that the that damage was relatively minor. It was mitigated heavily, but still severe weather today. So I'm gonna briefly touch on that. Talked about it a good bit last night while I was waiting for storms to fire. So it's going to be a brief touch up. There have been a few changes since then. Tornado threat has now dropped off. We no longer have the 2% area. Still could be a chance of a brief spin up, but I wouldn't really put much merit into it. Main threat is wind and definitely hail. Hail definitely seems to be the most prevalent threat out of all the other hazards today. Very good environment set up for that. As far as the wind pattern is concerned here, I'm not really impressed too much with what I've seen. When I look at the mid levels of the atmosphere, I mean, you can see a little branch of the trough here coming in, but it's not a very stout trough at that. And even as you look towards the middle levels of the atmosphere, it's nothing to really not necessarily be too concerned with. I'm trying to find the right word for it, but more or less like towards the lower levels of the atmosphere, just not really a lot to work with here. And this is definitely what I believe was the reason why the 2% threat dissipated here, because we go to O1Z, we don't really have much of a mid-level jet or a low-level jet. Everything's relatively elevated. So I'm thinking just the nature of the storm itself might just be elevated as well here. Temperatures are pretty high today, and then dew points are in the 60s, 70s. So the lapse rates are also another factor there. But as we look through the day today, get into the 80s, we see a few areas reaching 90s, even in the triple digits. So it's going to be a hot day across Dallas. So definitely make sure you're staying cool if nothing else. And it's not until we get really later into the evening where things really start to pick up here. Here's the dew points, by the way, getting into the 60s, into the 70-degree dew points. We go ahead and take a look at this area. I'm going to go back just a little bit towards 22Z, let's say. Getting into those mid 60s right here, and you can see that almost a perfect setup for a hailer for sure. So a lot of dry air in at multiple levels of the atmosphere. Pretty steep lapse rates here. We're well above 8.0 degrees Celsius per kilometer, which is more than ideal enough for hail. And on the significant hail analogs, we even see potential for potentially even grapefruit size hail and beyond. Like I said, with the wind profile not being impressive, you don't really see much going on with the hodograph here. No real surprise. But definitely more than unstable enough. Energy helicity index is kind of lacking here, as well as storm relative felicity, 94 meters squared per second squared. It is suitable enough for tornado development, but nothing incredible here. Looking at the wind barbs here, not really much in the way of directional shear. If anything, maybe speed shear. So damaging winds seem like they're very much possible, especially with the indicator of downward cape or downdraft cape here being at almost 1500. So good indicator there of hail and maybe some damaging winds. But as far as the tornado threat's concerned, nothing really to write home about for sure. But that's looking at the thermodynamics, looking at the kinematics. We already did that, but if you look at the lapse rates, this is also a really good indicator as well. We have some 8s here, maybe even close to 8.5 at one point I might have seen on an earlier run, but this 12Z run here shows that lapse rates are going to be pretty steep across the area today. That being said, as we go into tomorrow, things will clear out more. We're down to a marginal risk at that point, so I'm not going to really put too much merit into that. As far as the instability itself, which is a better indicator of the thermodynamics here, we get up to about close to 4,000 joules per kilogram here, as indicated in some of those areas close to being in the magenta color. If I click on this, we may see a torr sounding here, but again, like I said, directional shear isn't that impressive. It's not very strong at all. Like I said, I still wouldn't rule out a tornado, but I wouldn't expect anything incredible. One thing to make note of, though, of course, is the hail potential. Significant hail index parameter of 2.2. Usually you don't see stuff like that too often, so the ceiling for hail is pretty high here. But yeah, downward cape also at 1411. This is probably some of the better parameters here, but there are some limiting factors with this as well. Like I said, I mainly think hail is going to be the big threat here, and I think the window for tornado would be very brief, if at all. Also, another thing to make note of, any of these multicellular or supercellular cluster, whatever mode we end up with, it's going to be a high precipitation type of situation with precipitable water above 2 inches. Usually at about 1.5 inches, it's usually already high precip, but the C2 is pretty impressive. Kind of alarming too, so threat for flash flooding definitely exists too. As we go into the evening, of course, we start to lose that instability along with our binaural heating, or daytime heating as it's called. And then, of course, we look towards tomorrow for maybe more severe weather, a little further off towards south central Texas. So looking at lapse, after looking at the lapse rates and the cape here, only thing to really do is look at the reflectivity and see what ends up coming of that. So here's that MCS from yesterday moving out. Storms will start to fire later tonight towards about 7 o'clock central. Really going to be dealing with more overnight storms. Like I said, the timing of this is really going to be the key as far as tornado development would be concerned, but even then it's rather limited. But yeah, towards the eastern side of the slight risk is where I would expect some of the larger hail to be from this point. Even then, the window for this is brief. May go live and cover this just for the hail stream. Just for the hail stream, that's an interesting name. I think that might be what we call it. But just to chat with you guys more than anything. So if you're interested, be sure to hop in. Definitely not a must see, but if you want to hang out, feel free. But that being said here, that's all I got for this video. I'll probably have some videos up in the morning in case you don't see the stream regarding the week ahead. But till then, this has been Metalhead Weatherman. You guys take care. Have a nice day, and I'll see you on Monday.